Hello and welcome back to the Sander Lanch podcast, the number one podcast about the work of Brandon Sanderson, hosted by two Texans and two Australians. I am Joe, and with me as always is
Jamie,
Data,
and Dak.
It's my cue.
Yes, that's okay. We're all here. We're here, of course, to talk about Mistborn, the Final Empire, chapters 20 and 21, wherein Vin gets a little lesson on the more subtle arts of allomancy from Kelsier's brother Marsh. She also gets a little bit more background on Kelsier and Marsh's relationship, and we get a little more background on her. And then we're whisked away as Kelsier goes to inspect the army with Yedden. And Yedden, it looks like he'll be taking over the army as general, as Ham is needed back in Luthadel. And Kelsier takes some dark turns in trying to invigorate his troops. But we'll find out more about that in just a few minutes. Hold on to something, everybody. The Sander Lanch is about to begin.
My revolution carries me in a moment lost in time. My revolution sets me free. I will flow across the line. Bring up the brother in me. I'm searching for.
Okay, guys, so what did you think overall this week of these two chapters? I feel like the first one, especially, not a whole lot happens, but I kind of said that about several chapters in the last few that we've done, despite all the craziness.
So these chapters I quite liked, even though not a huge amount happened in chapter 20. Just getting that little bit more about Vin and Kelsier and Marsh, and sort of exploring their relationships, and that little taster again of maybe what Marsh and Mare's relationship was. I quite liked that. I also really enjoyed the insight, like Vin was starting to enjoy herself at these noble balls, and she's really changing who she is as a person. So there wasn't a lot of new information, but I thought that it was quite a good chapter. And going to see the army, it was nice to sort of change tact a little bit and see what the rebellion was actually up to. Yedden sounds like a kind of cool guy now. He's on board and happy with how everything's going, and loving life. Yeah, Kelsier's a bit of a worry as well, and I think Ham really his opinions and kind of second guessing what they're doing might cause some problems for Kelsier. Yeah, I'm finding I'm sort of less worried about what Vin's going to do at this point, and starting to be a bit more concerned about what Kelsier's going to do. But otherwise, I quite enjoyed the two chapters this week. They were good.
Yeah, Vin, the first chapter is very character heavy with just like little character stuff, which I really enjoy. And Vin and Marsh in that chapter, and then Ham in the next chapter are both kind of expressing some fear about what's going on with Kelsier. So I think that's leading somewhere interesting here.
Yeah, I think the things I enjoyed most about the chapters were the fact that we got to see more of Marsh and Ham, because I feel like those characters have been sort of left by the wayside a bit so far. It's just nice to get those moments with the other members of the crew. I feel like we've seen a hell of a lot of Breeze, but not so much of some of the other characters, so it's nice to get more time with them and see inside their head. The thing that hit me most about the end of the chapter is less that Kelsier is going down his dark path, but Ham's reaction to it. I think it's the first time we've seen Ham shaken up. Like, he seemed fairly unflappable and calm and always happy to make a joke or good for a chat, but just otherwise, fairly unfazed by things. And now all of a sudden he's just like, dude, what the hell? Mm-hmm. And that just sort of gives me an indication of, all right, things are getting dark. This guy is now upset. And
Ham's really a deep thinker, and he's now spent time with the troops. He's away from Kelsier. He's away from that high level planning. He's like, these are people. They have real lives. What's going to happen to them? Like, you're just going to send 10,000 men to their slaughter. You can understand why he's quite concerned, and Kelsier doesn't seem to share that concern as openly or at all. Kelsier thinks he's doing the right thing. I think we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so these two chapters for me, not so much the first chapter. I liked getting the Marsh and the Vin stuff, but the second chapter, I never, I feel like I'm never on a sure footing with any of these characters. Like as soon as I think I understand where somebody's coming from or how they're thinking or how they feel about what's going on, we take kind of a left or right turn. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I like it or because I'm a big fan of characters that are complex, but that also, especially when you're talking about heroes, that are also ones that truly have a benevolent goal ahead of them. And I feel like sometimes we get so muddy in this book, it's hard for me to know if I really like these people or if I despise them. And I mean, you could say the same thing about books like Game of Thrones, things like that, but I don't know. It was the second chapter, especially the conversations between Hammond and Kelsier. It was a tough read for me.
So is it just like Kelsier in this one, or when does it come up before that you feel like characters taking a left turn? Now I'm curious about the.
Well, I feel like Vin takes a lot of turns. Of course, she's kind of the new person in this world. You know, she's the Harry Potter of like finding out about all of these things for the first time character. So you kind of expect her to change and go in different directions. But I mean, Breeze to an extent. I mean, I feel like right off the bat, you know what kind of person he is, but then he gets like when you find out more about his powers, I start to feel icky. And then Hammond in this second chapter, especially talking about like maybe the nobles should rule over the sky. It's just like I don't know. It just feels icky. I feel icky reading about what's going on. Which I mean, it's real. It's not. It feels real. It doesn't feel like a fairy tale, I guess you would say. Like these are obviously characters that have a lot of complexity to them.
I feel like in Hammond's case, it's really more of just him looking for another philosophical question. Like he's pursuing a line of thought that he thinks is interesting, but he may not necessarily believe that line of thought. He's just opening up to see. I think he just prods people to see how they'd react when he says these things. I don't think.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, except that Kelsier questions it a lot, and he thinks, is this Hammond just being Hammond, or is there something going on? Like, does he really feel this way?
I don't know. I think that's just Kelsier, like, has a raw nerve on the topic of nobility and how dare they think they can do these things to us. So the fact that anyone would even say something of that nature, he took it a bit personally.
And I mean, as we're reading this chapter 2, we are getting Kelsier's take on it, not so much Ham's take on what Ham's take on the conversation. You know, maybe Ham's just throwing it out there as a question, but maybe it's a genuine concern. Like, it makes sense that what they're about to do is no small task, and there is the potential for a lot of lives to be lost. And I mean, Ham's raised the question before, you know, are they good? Is the Lord Ruler the sliver of infinity? Like, he really thinks about this and goes, you know, well, what side are we on? Which, sure, it might just be a philosophical question to throw out, but you know, he's spending a lot of time with these people. Maybe he's really, really actually concerned about this stuff, which I think would be quite interesting to throw in the story rather than having a team of people that are all like, yep, this is our goal and nothing's going to shake us. It's going to add another dimension to this army as well.
I think the impression that the book wants us to take from it, at least, is from Kelsier's perspective at that point. He's saying, you know, Ham, because he confronts Ham about that. He's like, you don't really believe that, right? And Ham thinks about it. He's like, no, I guess not. But Kelsier's worried that, you know, somewhere deep down, maybe all of them believe something like that. And it kind of leads into that scene later where he's like doing this thing because he's got to give these people something to make them think maybe they can beat the nobility, because they've been raised to think that, you know, the nobility are better than them, and that's the way that things are supposed to be. So I guess somebody kind of had to say it so that he could deal with it out in the open. And Ham makes a lot of sense to be the person who would be thinking of stuff like that.
True.
But yeah, that's the impression that I get anyway. I don't know. And I definitely agree that it's more interesting if there's, you know, second thoughts and doubts, even if they're not public doubts that these characters are having as they're going through and doing a thing that no one in 1,000 years has been able to do, or trying to do the thing.
It's really just setting up the parallels with the epitaphs and the person in them who's just like, I think I'm doing the right thing, but am I?
Epigraphs. Epitaph is a different thing.
Yep.
I make the same mistake all the time.
God damn it. Yes, that is what I meant.
But that's a good transition into the beginning of chapter 20. Is the first epigraph is about the thing that he sees following him. That the time we heard about this before, he's like, I think I may be going crazy. There's a thing following me. And now it's more detailed. He's like, there's a thing there. It's all wispy and stuff. So
I was so proud of myself. I was when it was the line of like it's made out of a dark fog, and my brain just went like, or a mist, and then the next line is or mist perhaps. I was like, damn it.
You got there a second before they did. Good job.
Oh well, we get a quick turnaround on these things in this book, so
It's true.
Yep.
So I just need to share that.
So
You were
any
so proud,
thoughts about the Yeah, you deserve to be proud. You called it. Even if it was one line ahead of time, it's okay.
Good job, Jamie.
So what do you guys think that that's going on with the hero back here, the Lord Ruler, or whoever it turns out it actually is? At this point, I think I may just start calling it the Lord Ruler. The book is definitely telling us, hey, this is the Lord Ruler's journal. We even see a piece of it in chapter 21 where it's pretty clear it's the exact journal that we've been reading, and they're like, yep, this is Lord Ruler's journal, all right.
I was going to say, like, the first line of that thing Kelsier reads, I'm just like, I've read this before, and it's the first line of the book.
I got so excited, and I was like, maybe the chapter's just going to be what we've read with all the little bits in between, and then it was a little bit of it, and I was like, maybe there'll be more later. I just want to read it.
The recap episode. Chapter.
It's kind of mean. Sazed is only able to translate a little bit of it at a time, so we're like getting whatever Sazed has translated so far, just a little bit doled out at a time. But what do you guys think the Lord Ruler back then is seeing out in the night? Even though we don't really know what's going on with this dude back 1,000 years ago or whatever, or what could possibly be happening, other than he's climbing through the mountains trying to find the way to defeat the deepness.
Maybe it's the first ever mist wraith, and it's just following him around like all the mist wraiths are said to do, just like some misbegotten dog.
I think this is going to turn
he's just
out.
luring it with meat. Like, here, fleshy, fleshy, fleshy.
Come on. This has got to be. This is the deepness. He can see it. The deepness is gonna take over his soul, and the fact that the deepness is this mist. I mean, makes sense that there's so much. People are afraid of the mists and things like that as they go through. It's kind of like we talked about before about that the deepness we think has sort of taken over the Lord Ruler. To have it as something it's not physically, like it doesn't have tentacles, you can't like defeat. That's got to be a crock and bull story that the Lord Ruler's telling everybody because he's defeated this thing, but it's dark, it's mysterious, it'll just take him over. It was kind of cool to have it sort of addressed. Now this is this darkness slowly coming into his life. He's had all this uncertainty, and I think we're going to see the effects of this pretty quickly.
Interesting. I like the idea that there's like maybe everyone's scared of the mist for a good reason, and it's not just superstition 1,000 years later. But if he doesn't have tentacles, then the magical caltrops of Antioch or whatever will never work.
Maybe the deepness has minions.
Yeah.
Or like if we're right that the deepness has possessed him, then maybe like the overall battle is him taking out the previous person who was infected with the deepness. I don't know. It's like
Maybe.
a Dark Avatar situation.
Oh. Okay. Interesting. Let's get into this chaptery thing. We start out with Vin just going back and forth from Luthadel to Felice. It turns out that there's not just balls. There's luncheons and sitting parties, whatever the hell sitting parties are. I assume some kind of party where you sit. And she ends up driving back and forth from Luthadel like several times a day and spending 6 hours in her carriage, which I understand her frustration there.
Sitting parties is just cracking open a few cold ones with the girls.
Yeah, I assumed it was like a tea party brunch thing,
Yeah.
Let's have brunch.
Vin has like a crew now, like the girls. We're gonna get a whole Mean Girls thing. More so than we've already gotten, I guess.
I mean, she does mention that Lady Ilariel just does, any time she sees her, just takes the opportunity to treat her like garbage.
True. Which, unsurprising, I think, to probably everyone.
Yeah.
And she's as she's driving back, she's thinking how annoyed she is that not only can she not do allomancy because she's still recovering from her injury, but Elend hasn't even been like spending any time with her.
Yeah, it's a real teenage nightmare. It's like, if I can't see Elend, I'd rather be banished. I hate Romeo so much.
That's how you really feel.
Well, no, you know Romeo, he's boring. Tybalt, that's where it's at. That guy's cool. That's the only other character from Romeo and Juliet I remember, so.
I mean, that play, in my opinion, I love the Bard, but that play sucks.
I like Macbeth.
Yeah, that one's good. I also really like Julius Caesar, which some people say is boring, but
Caesar was pretty cool. I like Othello.
This is the Shakespeare portion of the show, people. To be
It's
or not
like
to be, and so on and so forth.
We've made all the lowbrow pop culture references in the past. This is us trying to appeal to more like higher literature.
Widening our target audience.
yeah, exactly.
Now that we've got the audience who loves Dragon Ball Z or
Sure.
or Final Fantasy, now we got to
Final
get
Fantasy.
those snooty.
Akira Toriyama
Shakespeare
worked on
people.
both.
Okay.
But no, seriously, I mean, Hamlet's obviously the most superior Shakespeare play.
Okay. I'll let you have that.
Sure.
There's a ghost and his uncle sleeping with his mom and stuff. It's got some interesting bits. That's also where those two guys are from, right? Who show up in other stuff now.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Yeah, those two. Thank you.
Yeah, they're dead.
And then and so we also get a new entry in It Sucks to Be a Ska, where Vin sees a group of ragged children having to like shake the trees to get the soot out of the trees.
I really want music for this segment. It sucks to be a ska.
You could just sing every time. That's your new job. And so
It did make me think. It's like, this is. I'm sure it's come up before, but this is the first time that we've seen a job that is explicitly for the children and only the children to do.
Mm.
I don't know. It just spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched Snowpiercer. It made me think of like the kids in the train at the end. It's like, well, yeah, they're the only ones who fit, so the kids are the only ones who can get into the trees. So what else are we gonna do? We can't use anyone else.
Never seen Snowpiercer,
Damn, man.
so I have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay.
It's a good movie.
They need a Lorax-like character who speaks for the trees.
Okay.
Well, didn't the Lord Ruler have a buddy who was wondering if trees could think? Where's that guy when you need him?
Yeah, Juan. He's you have to assume, since apparently he was not popular with the hero, the Lord Ruler there at the end, that once he took over everything, that guy probably did not last long.
And all his writings were banished. There will be no tree or tree-related texts allowed in the Final Empire.
Maybe that's why all the plant life is brown. It's like, nope, get rid of it.
Specifically to spite that one guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'll show you, Quan. I'll make the plants brown somehow.
Turns out the Lord Ruler is just massively anti-environmentalist.
Well, things aren't exactly thriving, so.
Yeah, we haven't seen any factories or anything. I think they've talked about mills, and they're not super technologically advanced, I guess. Because the anti-environmentalism stuff, we didn't manage to hurt the environment much until the Industrial Revolution, when we're doing all these polluting things. So
That's true, yeah.
I don't know how they would pollute things very well at their technology level,
Yeah.
at least from what we've seen.
And then when you made the mutant called Captain Planet, you know what I mean?
So Vin is also thinking, it's like Ellen and the others, they must not understand how bad the lives are for the ska. They just stay inside their pretty keeps and don't understand. I don't know, going to these parties is almost as soon as she went to one or two, she was already like, oh, the noblemen aren't so bad as I've always thought, being a ska and being under their oppressive boot heels. And now she's like, no, they're great. They probably just don't get it. And I mean, we've talked about how maybe that's true for at least some of them, right? Like some of them maybe she's right about, but there's pretty horrible noblemen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get sympathetic when they're not directing their, condescension towards her for being a Scar.
If you were raised as a nobleman and you're in your carriage and you're driving through Luthadel or wherever you are, how many of them are actually going to stop and look outside and notice anything? Like Vin notices because she knows. But if they don't know, of course they're not going to be taught everything that happens to the Scar. Like they'll know when they need to know, but otherwise they're too busy at their sitting parties and luncheons and balls and getting ready for such things and spending 6 hours in their carriage where they, probably just want to read a book or talk to each other. Like they're not going to look out the window.
Somebody's a nobleman apologist.
Ooh.
Moving on. So Vin gets back to Manor Rainu, and they find a bunch of stuff being loaded up, and it turns out, we're getting some weapons coming in, and they're going to be taken out to the army, which is good. Armies need weapons, right?
Well, you'd think so.
I like Kelsier's little bit about, the soldiers don't even know that Rainu is in on our plan. They think that I'm just scamming some nobleman, which probably it just goes to increase Kelsier's rep.
Kelsier spends a lot of time building this reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know the real Kelsier at this point?
I don't think even Kelsier knows the real Kelsier.
Yeah.
Vin is scared for a second that she might have to go to see the army with him, and he's like, oh, so I guess somebody's enjoying their balls and their parties.
It's like, my job is to go to a fancy place, hang out with people, and eat food.
I would be enjoying it too, probably, yeah.
Breeze is right. This is the life.
And then we find out she's going to spend some time with Marsh, learning about seeking and using bronze. And like even Kelsier's like, bronze is one of the less useful metals, especially for full Mistborn. So it's not just if you're a Mistborn, it's not that useful. It's overall, it's kind of crap. I say about my brother's only power. But I think
it's one of those. I've got all these other powers. The fuck do I need this one for?
Yeah. I mean, Marsh makes a pretty good argument here in a bit for why it's useful, but
yeah,
I think Kelsier's just not good at it, and he's like, it's not so great.
And Vin heads over, and she starts thinking about, like, maybe I am liking this whole nobleman thing too much. Once her problems had been things like starvations and beatings, and now they were things like extended carriage rides and companions who arrived late for appointments.
First world problems.
Yeah, it was like serious, like not ska world problems, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I like we just had the thing where she's like, the noblemen, they really aren't so bad. They don't even understand. And then she's like, I used to get beatings all the time and starved by the nobleman overlords, but it's fine. I also like that Marsh and Kelsier have that much in common, that they're both late to things. It's kind of a funny little family quirk.
It's probably left over from their nobleman upbringing. Because I doubt noblemen are expected to be on time to stuff.
It's probably true. She kind of pouts more about Ellen not paying any attention to her. It's like, besides, it's like if Ellen would probably forget about me if I disappeared again. You need some self-respect. I'm sorry. It's just, or a teenage girl. And then she overhears these people. They're talking about Kelsier, and they're kind of in awe. It's like, oh my gosh, that's him. See the scars? It's that guy. And talking about the 11th metal, so we know that these rumors are still out there, despite Kelsier saying previously that they're gonna have to spread some counter rumors.
She makes a point here. It's like, the rebellion's momentum isn't actually gathering; it's all Kelsier.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the later chapter, it's like Kelsier's going, "This is my army," and like, okay, this is not the end goal we thought we were going for.
Right. Well, and I mean, and Vin explicitly thinks it here in this chapter. She's just like, it's all Kelsier's personality fueling this. Can he really, is he really going to be able to let go if the Scar Rebellion does take over? Is he just going to give up the power that, because given what we've seen about how his personality is kind of fueling this and his reputation among the Ska, it wouldn't be hard for him to take over if they actually managed to take over Luthadel, because Yedden's supposedly in charge, but I think everyone would be more than happy to follow Kelsier instead. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Dak has talked about how, like, maybe Kelsier ends up being a bad guy here, and Vin is kind of explicitly worried about that possibility here. What do you think?
It's another one of those things where it's like I thought I was being super clever with the prediction back then, and now they're leaning a lot harder into it. I'm like, maybe that's the obvious choice. Maybe they're going to pull the rug out from under the rug they've already pulled out. I don't know.
So many rugs. I don't know that Kelsier would go and take over, but I mean it would be incredibly easy. Like if something were to happen to Yedin, Kelsier would be the natural stand-in. Also, when did we start calling him Lord Kelsier? Have I just missed that, or was that only in these chapters? It's like, oh, okay, someone's thinking a bit of themselves. Like, I know there's titles in the army and general this and stuff, but it's General Yedin. It's not Lord Yedin. Right. And if he's the leader of this army, I don't know. I think
he's
we're
the
more
one calling Kelsier Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're more at risk of Kelsier going bad than we are him taking over the army. But I could see it's incredibly easy that he would do that.
It's almost like in American history when George Washington was the lead general that won the revolution, they wanted to make him king. And it's like people were trying to call him like Your Majesty Washington and stuff. He's like, no, I don't want that. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Kelsier's definitely not stopping it in this. And I think part of it is we don't see Kelsier interacting with a whole lot of regular Ska who know who he is. We saw him with Hoyd in the last episode, and Hoyd was calling him Lord. That's because he thought he was a high nobleman because he was meeting a Mistborn, and that's obviously what you would think meeting a Mistborn is they're a high nobleman. But now he's interacting with these regular Ska for the first time maybe since the beginning of the book. Or I guess maybe since Vin's crew. That may have been the last time we saw his interactions with just like regular folks. That wasn't him standing up and giving a speech in front of people. And I want to now hold on. We're gonna go back to that point. What was that guy's name who took over Kammen's crew? His name was Milev. If I search for Milev, then I bet it'll come up quick.
Rewind.
They called him Master Kelsier at the time. Kammen called him the Master Kelsier and Master Dachshund. So yeah, that's not the same as Lord, but it's a little bit of a honorary or sort of title. So I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely a difference in how the Ska that we see are interacting with him for sure, and he's not shutting it down.
No.
Which is also odd considering he hates the aristocracy and all the lords so much, and now they're calling him one of them effectively, and he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I don't know, just like weird. He hates them, but he's being referred to by the same honorific. It doesn't seem to bother him. That just struck me as a bit strange.
And it's not like he's using a different name. Like I know he's posing as a lord, but they're definitely calling him Lord Kelsier. Whereas like Vin is at least Lady Valette. It's a totally different name. It's a different persona. But this is his name. Like people know who he is. And it's not sitting well.
I like that Vin kind of ends her thought here with like, you know what? I guess Kelsier would be okay to be in charge. He's a good guy. He'd probably make a good ruler. So she's not even, even if that's what was going to happen, she wouldn't really fight it. She says it would still smell of a betrayal, like a reneging on a promise, and she didn't want to see that Kelsier doing that. But at the same time, she's like, it'd be better than the Lord Rulers. So, I like him. Maybe I wouldn't mind, which is an interesting attitude for her to be taking. But, And then Marsh shows up, and Kelsier's like, hey, you go, show her some stuff. And she brings up a good point, which in response to the stuff that Kelsier was telling us about how, he's trying to make Mare's dreams come true. And she's like, keepers could maybe memorize languages and religions, but they can't, like, pop out seeds for plants that no longer exist. Plants are all brown. How are you going to make them green again? Kelsier doesn't seem to have, that we know of at least, given that a whole lot of thought for how that's going to work.
Yeah, you might be freeing the Ska from the oppression of the Lord Ruler, but you can't bring the flower back. Or is it a hope that if this gets overthrown, that it'll just come back naturally? It might be different, but you won't have ash and a red sun and.
Yeah, it's Lion King principle. Once you overthrow the evil king, then the land and the plants and the animals will come back. Circle of life.
Do you think that's how it's going to go?
Nope. Hell no.
Okay. Okay, so skipping forward. Marsh comes up and they have kind of a I don't even know what to call it, a competition of who can be the most short and taciturn's not the right word, laconic. That's the word I'm looking for because Wash said it one time in Firefly.
Always like to be concise.
Oh, yeah. And she's a little bit intimidated by Marsh because he's got the whole she's like, I get why they called him Iron Eyes. And he's he starts out a little bit kind of condescending about it. He's like, look, you Mistborn people, you don't get how important stuff like bronze and copper are because you're just so powerful, ooh la la. And
it does sort of go to the things like you've got all these other powers which are much more overt and powerful. You think, well, what good is this one? But for those of us who only have this power, we know how to use it and actually make it effective. So,
Well, and I'm curious because we learn in this chapter, and we're about to go into, because he's like, knowing whether the guy attacking you is a thug, burning pewter, or a coin shot, which is I don't remember if they've even mentioned that before. Those are the people who use push with steel pushes. Yeah, steel pushes.
Steel push, yeah.
So yeah, they're called coin shots because they can shoot coins at you.
That's a cool name.
Yeah. So he says, wouldn't that be really useful to be able to tell which one of the guy who's attacking you, what kind of thing they're able to do, which makes perfect sense. But I don't think we really learn much about bronze before now. What did you guys think that it was? Did you think that you could already tell what anybody was burning by sensing them, or how did you see it working?
I only assumed that it worked to tell you that somebody was using allomancy, not the specific type of allomancy they were using.
Yeah, okay. I think I was the same.
Yeah.
It's been so long for me that it's hard to remember, but I think for some reason when I started the book, I just assumed they're like, oh yeah, you can sense allomancy with this. So I was like, oh, well then you know exactly what's going on. Until you get to this chapter and it's like, oh no, you can just kind of get a general idea of there's some allomancy over there unless you're really good at it. He makes another good point that, if you see somebody using allomancy and there's no smoker around, but you can't sense them, that means they're a Mistborn and you should run. Or an Inquisitor, in which case, also run.
But I feel like if you'll be able to tell if someone's an Inquisitor or not because they will have spikes in their face. So.
Well, can you? But can you, though? Do all Inquisitors have spikes? It comes back to how do they become an Inquisitor? Yeah. Maybe the spikes is, I think in one of the last episodes we talked about their little graduation, it becomes quite a ceremony to have their spikes through their eyes and that makes them, a higher Inquisitor. But maybe there are people out there that are just Inquisitors.
Interesting. Okay.
Maybe.
I also he gives a little detail that's if you get really good at this, you can even tell what emotion somebody's trying to get at in your brain. Maybe you can identify when someone is flaring their metals or even when they're running low on metals, and all of these sound like pretty awesome advantages to me.
Yeah, definitely that last one.
So we get he's basically lecturing us and Vin on why this one power that we've probably ignored up till now is pretty cool. And Vin seems to take to this almost as naturally as she's taken to every other thing, because she's immediately sensing these things that he eventually is like, it took me 6 months of practice before I could sense that. And she can't sense everything that he's asking about, but she's really good to the point where he's like, oh, you must be practicing this. And she's like, no, not really.
I mean, what did you expect from the daughter of the Lord Ruler, man?
I did love his did it work? No, I can't sense anything. Good. It took me 6 months to figure that out. If you'd done it on the first try, I'd have felt like crap.
And see, I think here's another difference between him and Kelsier is that exact situation. Because when Kelsier came up against that same situation, when he's talking to Sazed, he's like, she's just really good. And we talked about on the podcast, maybe Kelsier's just not as good as he thinks. Maybe she's not that naturally good. But Marsh immediately thinks the opposite, where he's like, I'm really glad you couldn't do that, because then I would have felt like a loser for having to take 6 months to learn how to do it. So he definitely doesn't have quite Kelsier's pride, I think, even if he is intimidating in his own right.
Well, he mentions at one point he's been a seeker. He snapped quite a long time ago, and so you got the two brothers. One of them is a misting, and the other one apparently is not. Has no abilities whatsoever. And then Kelsier, Kelsier winds up with the girl Marsh doesn't feel great about that. And then they go off and get captured, and Mare dies in the pits. Kelsier comes back, and he's a Mistborn. I think at that point, Marsh's pride has already been shattered. He's already lost the girl he loved to his brother. And then when his brother comes back from all that, his brother has way more powers. Like the thing that made Marsh more in terms of ability than Kelsier has been, Kelsier has just far outstripped him as a result of that anyway. So, I think Marsh just doesn't have time for pride anymore.
It's an interesting point. That's some serious sibling rivalry shit there.
Yeah. And, we know there's a lot of tension between these two, so.
It's true. And that's going to come up here in a minute even. But also, good line is that when he's like, perhaps you have as much talent as Kelsier has been bragging about, which that's cute. Kelsier's bragging about his apprentice or whatever you want to call her.
It's also Kelsier. It's like he could be like, yeah, look how good she is. I must be a good teacher.
So I'm curious also, now that it goes into detail here, and if you're a nerd like me, this is the super fun part where it's like, here's how you tell the pushing metals from the pulling metals, but then there's also this variance in wavelength of what you can feel. And that's how they organize the lower 8 metals into different categories to begin with, or at least some of them is by what you sense when you use bronze, and you sense whether they're pulling or pushing or what the wavelength is. Do you guys feel like that's more complicated than it needs to be? You could just say like, oh yeah, that feels like pewter, or I think it's cool. I don't know how other people feel about it.
I really like it.
Oh, just like it just makes it apparent that when he was writing it, Sanderson really wanted to go into as much detail. Like he thought about it. He didn't just want to say these are some cool powers and people do cool shit with them. He wanted to explore how they exist, why they exist, what you can do with them, and how they work, which always makes them feel more real and interesting than this guy can manipulate magnetic fields and throw shit around. End of story.
Yeah, I like that there's an order to it. There's a place for it. Like you answer some of these questions, and even though like it's not something that we would come across in our real lives, it's really well thought through. And okay, well, they can tell the difference. Well, how can they tell the difference? Here you go. I'll explain why they can tell the difference. And something, having different wavelengths and giving off different feelings and stuff. I'm like, that's really sciencey, and I like it. So, especially when we're dealing with metals and stuff that or at least the 8 metals that we know of and deal with, and they sit in our periodic table and they all have their own properties and things like that. Like it carries through into this world, and I think that's really cool.
I think it's probably one of my favorite parts about these books is the way that the world has magic, but the way they look at it, the people in the world, is they approach it scientifically to understand it. Like there's charts, and the metals are organized into pairs because Marsh talks about like, yeah, they research this and they use this bronze to sense to figure out how to divide them up. And it feels like a very scientific approach to categorize something that is quite clearly just crazy magical shit. Like I can push on stuff and fly through the air, but how does that work? We're going to find out. We're going to study it and categorize it and make it all make sense, which I feel like is how we would approach it in our world too. Is there would be some people who are just like, oh, this is cool magical craziness, and there would be people who are like, well, let's figure out all the details and understand it scientifically what is going on here. Vin notes that Marsh seems to know a lot about metals and things, and she kind of uses this opportunity to push on his emotions a bit to get him to talk about himself, and we start finding out some history. He's like, you know how Kelsier feels about the nobility? Well, that's how I feel about the obligators. I will do anything to hurt them. They took our mother, and that's when I snapped and vowed to destroy them. So he does not like obligators. Although he's now got like the eye tattoos and stuff so that he can, or he's going to, I forget if he already has them at this point, so that he can join the obligator ranks to try to bring them down.
I think that's where we'll see a bit of a difference between Marsh and Kelsier, though. Like Kelsier, I feel like would go in guns blazing, kill them all, done. Whereas Marsh will sit back and then, build up this undoing for the obligators, which, is a bit of a difference, I think, between the two brothers.
Yeah, Marsh definitely seems more of a planner and more patient than his brother. Although Kelsier has some sort of big plan that in the next chapter we even get hints that he hasn't even told people all of what he is planning. And then Marsh figures out that Vin is pushing out his emotions, and he's like, stop that. That is the second time you've done that. Do not ever do it again.
I love his reaction. It's like, I had to understand everything I could, be as good as, and are you soothing me?
It's like, I would never have noticed if I hadn't started rambling. You are good.
It's like mid train of thought. He's just like, it's like, and then all this is happening. Like, hey, hang on a minute. Stop it. Bad Mistborn.
And
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. I will destroy you.
And they talk a little bit about when Marsh first noticed her, when they tried to scam him, and she was pushing on his emotions. She promises not to do it again. Scouts on her. That's what I'm picturing in my head. You can't see me, but I'm like holding up these two fingers, like, I promise I won't do it again. And they talk about how Vin hates her brother, but Marsh does not hate Kelsier, even though, you know, he's frivolous and self-important, but he's my brother. And she says, and that's enough? And he nods, and she says, I have trouble understanding that. Which is just the saddest thing.
Always enough for me.
Yeah, we're such loving brothers.
Yeah, that is sad. You're right.
Yeah, no, it's really sad. It's maybe one of the saddest moments of Vin so far, where it's just like, you know, having this person, who's her family, that's not enough. That doesn't make you love someone. Which makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It's just sad.
It's also a very frank thing for her to say to someone she really doesn't know that well. I mean, it took her a while to warm up to Kelsier, and maybe it's just because she's gotten used to the crew and everything else like that. But you know, she and Marsh haven't really had much to do with each other, and now she's just like, yeah, I hated my brother, and I don't get people who like their siblings because.
I guess it makes sense. I mean, I agree, and it's almost the same thing you brought up before, where she's like, she's really open with Elend when it took so long to like break through her shell for other people. But I think part of it is like she doesn't have a chance to talk to people with brothers that she knows very often. Like, this may be the only pair of brothers that she knows offhand. The first chance she gets to compare her relationship with Reen with somebody else. And it's nice that like both Kelsier and Marsh are like, yeah, you know, I still love that guy. Neither of them seems to like each other all that much, but
do you love your brother? Yes, I just don't like him. He's a dickhead.
That's kind of what Marsh says as we continue on in the chapter, but he's like, you know, he's trying. We find out that you know, Vin's mom's crazy, heard voices, and Reen comes home one day and finds that their mother has killed her baby sister. Messily, that's its own sentence, is the word messily and then a period, which that just conjures, you know, fun stuff. And me, however, she had not touched except to give me an earring. Battling and proclaiming me to be a queen, holding me in her lap with my sister's corpse at our feet. And that's the day that they left living with her mom.
It's
Do
terrifying.
you need any more? No joke. But do you need any more evidence that this is the Lord Ruler's kid? I mean, she's calling her queen. She's killing other kids who aren't worth a damn. Honestly, I think maybe Vin accidentally killed her own sister, if I'm being honest about that theory in there. But anyway.
That's dark.
Not on purpose. She was a child.
And she's probably repressed the memory.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I find it interesting that her mom kills her sister, gives her an earring, and that's still the earring that Vin wears, that we've seen her talking about before, that she wears all the time, which is a little bit creepy.
I guess, you know, you have a child who desperately wants to believe that, you know, okay, mum was insane, she still loved me, and this is all I have left of her. It's like, when you love someone and you desperately want them to believe they loved you as well, you might hang on to things past the point of rationality. So even though mum was apparently a crazy nutcase, Vin is someone who has, at that point, has no one that really loved her, and she wants to believe that her mother did, so she holds onto the earring as a in the hope that that was true.
I'm really curious about what actually happened there, because they talk about the mother was trying to kill her when she was younger, and I'm like, this sentence doesn't sound like she tried to kill her, or did she try and kill her and Vin survived? Like, Vin appeared not to be touched. It's like, oh, what actually happened there? Is this the moment that you snapped? Like, or, you know, how old were you at this point? I think there's so many questions to be answered here. or did Vin make the mother kill the sister? Was the little sister getting too much attention? Like, yeah, I don't know. It opens so many questions.
It would also go a long way to explaining why Reen hated Vin so much and treated her like such garbage. He blames her for the whole mess.
Maybe, but I mean, he did take her away to, at least according to Vin, to keep her safe from her mom. They had to run, and he took her with him.
Well, probably, but I just assume save the sister, and then the more you think about it, the more you live with it. You just start to stew on it and dwell on it, and then eventually that turns into hatred and resentment, and using her for your own gain.
Yeah, there's definitely some stuff going on there, and I agree with Jamie that it's really makes you want to know more about that story. Although apparently the only person, unless Vin somehow recovers some repressed memories, the only person who could actually tell us is her crazy mom, who it doesn't seem like she's seen in a very long time. And then we start talking about Kelsier again, and Marsh is like, I've been known to kill obligators, murdering men just because they're noble. Like, he's worried about what's going on with Kelsier too. And it's not just that, he likes people to fawn over him, which the next chapter does not dispute that. Vin starts to pick up on, Marsh it wasn't just people liking Kelsier better, it was specific someone who liked Kelsier better. I think it's pretty impressive that she manages to pick up on that in just like a word or two in here. And but Marsh feels like he's trying to do something good now, so he's going to go along with it, but only really because he's like, Kelsier's plan is going to probably fail horribly and get him killed, but if he can sneak me into the ministry, then I can gather information that will help the rebellion for centuries after this. So he's really the long-term thinker here.
It also shows he's prepared to, give his life for the cause.
Yeah, no doubt. Although, given what we've just learned, whether it's for the cause or because of just how much he hates the obligators, may be up to question also.
Point.
Although I feel like that brings up something that we talked about before, where it's like, so apparently the obligators found out and killed the mom when they were pretty young. So I don't know, based on that, it's like, how did Marsh and Kelsier not also get killed? It's interesting. And Marsh says that when Kelsier comes back, he'll have to stop coming in through the front door before people start to realize what's going on and connect this guy with the survivor. So he'll have to be more subtle when he gets back. And Vin has a thought where she's like, they really don't hate each other. What would that be like? Which, once again, that's just, you poor thing.
Your daily reminder.
Yeah, well. And that's what the chapter ends with, more or less. It's saying this, like the concept of allomantic pulse links that she was supposed to be looking for. She just didn't understand this loving a sibling thing. So, yeah, the first chapter is very character-focused there. And in the second chapter, we're getting... I'm glad that we finally get to see the army and kind of what's going on with this whole thing, because we've been very kind of laser focused on Vin for a lot of these chapters since they've been recruiting an army. But I guess first we got the epigraph, which in this case is a quote, which the other ones aren't in quotes. So it's like the guy who's writing the journal is quoting something. It's the Hero of Ages. It's something about the Hero of Ages, a description of what the Hero of Ages will be.
Yeah, shall be not a man but a force. Yeah, it's very just dehumanizing.
Yeah.
It's well, maybe, I don't know, but like dehumanizing fits, but not in a like less than human, but in more of a more than human sort of way, like building up to godhood. So,
right.
Is this because it's in quotes? Like Quan was the one who came up with the prophecy. I assume this is what Quan was saying. I assume this is a quote from Quan about Lord Ruler's future.
Mm. And then, like I think Dak was saying earlier, we move into the chapter, and it's the words that we've read. Were those really the very first words? Hold on, I gotta look.
Yep.
Look at that. We're bringing it full circle. Yep. Sometimes I worry I'm not the hero everyone thinks I am. Was the very first sentence of the book, and here it comes again.
And yeah, it's like I think the first paragraph of this little note from Lord Ruler's journals is new, but all the rest of them, I'm pretty sure they are from the epigraphs earlier in the book.
Yeah, it should be sounding
very familiar. I think the last
familiar
sentence as well, it sort of brings a couple of them together, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and the last sentence is I can't talk. An interesting one that I was going to bring up, because that's the one that started out, I think, section 2, that you guys were like, that sounds like it's different from the rest, like it's not part of the same thing. But when you read it in context, it kind of fits.
Yeah. And that's it. It's like, oh, so we've just been reading all these epigraphs out of order.
Mm-hmm.
Lord Ruler presents
maybe.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, kind of. We get more to talk about Rashek, which, like I said, I think we already read all this, but it's like, man, if anyone could spot a fraud, wouldn't it be him? But he hates me so much. And Kelsier just finds this super interesting. He's like, I'm really glad I had Says give me a copy of this, because there's nothing else to do on this long trip. But this is really interesting look at the character of this guy, except at the same time, it kind of annoys him. He's like, you know, it all fits with what we've heard about the Lord Ruler from before, that he was like the greatest of men, entrusted with the fate of mankind. And, you know, seeing all this self-doubt and stuff just makes it more tragic.
That's how Kelsier operates, though. He tries to always think of his enemies as not people, but as just objects worthy of destruction. That's how he thinks of the nobility. So he's just like, God damn it, I hate thinking about my enemies like they're people.
I thought it was really interesting too that this extract is filled with self-doubt and questioning himself, and then later in this chapter you've got the question. It's like, are we the same? Should we be ruled? And he's like, no. You know, just don't let that doubt creep in.
Yeah. I want to see Ham's reaction to reading this, because I feel like he would have an interesting take on it. Let's see. So Kelsier comes out and he says it's time to be a bit ostentatious, and starts flying through the air in front of everybody.
Like he hasn't been already.
Yeah, but he usually does it at night. He's like, it's kind of weird in like full daylight doing this.
He's like, oh wow, my cloak looks a lot less impressive, like against the daytime sky.
Without the mist, you know, it's a mist cloak, so it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yedden calls him Lord Kelsier. I think that may be the first occurrence, actually. It's like, we've arrived at the I like how people keep telling him we've arrived at the crossroads. And he tries to be friendly about it, but he's just like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Come on. And they meet up with a group of people led by young Captain Damu to take them to General Hammond. And I like how Kelsier thinks about how young this guy is, but he's like, well, just because I was like a fop when I was that age doesn't mean that everyone is. Fop is a good word. I like it. And then as they approach the caves where the rebellion is hiding, we get Kelsier's thoughts about having to go down in there, which is a recurring theme in this chapter. But we also get a little peek at life at the pits of Hathsin, which
basically
is hardcore.
Cave diving and shoving your hands into the rock walls to pull out the geodes, which I presume must be where the scars on his wrist come from.
Yeah, I think that it's like jagged, rocky holes that he's reaching through.
Yeah, it's like just jam your hand in there and pull them back out again. You're shredding your forearms.
Right. We finally know how he got those scars. He really does have like a Joker vibe, right? He's like, he's got the scars. He's like, check me out. Look at my scars. And then he's like, oh, hey, by the way, I wanna put some chaos into the final empire. How about that?
Does kind of want to watch it.
Got a real
watch the
Joker
world
thing going on.
This empire deserves a better class of ruler.
Yeah, I mean, he's
technically
a criminal too, so
Yep.
he could even say this empire deserves a better class of criminal.
I mean, he doesn't really have a problem with the other criminals. It's the institution that he's not a fan of.
Yeah. Kelsier, why is your miscloak purple now? No reason.
Why are you wearing makeup? Why did you cover your arms in white makeup?
We also learned that Allomancy destroys or shatters the adium crystals, and that's why they have to have plain old people go down there and pull out the adium. And one geode bought you 1 week of life at the pits. Of all the sadistic things that we've heard about, this shouldn't be surprising, but it's pretty hardcore.
Hard price.
It's pretty awful.
My first thought was like, it just seems impractical.
Yeah.
I don't know. You hear the fantasy stories about slaves working in the mines, and like and the stories generally go, we just work the slaves until they die, and then you got these guys. It's like, nah, screw that. We're speeding up the process. If they can't do the job right in a week, we're going to kill them. You're going to run out of miners.
Realistically,
but then I remember
they won't.
Scar are just not valued, and like just brought in all the damn time.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to die anyway, and it depends on, I guess, how many people were actually being sent there and why were they being sent there, because you'd probably have an overrun of people and you'd be like, we'll get rid of you. I mean, we never intended for you to leave anyway. We might as well just kill you because you might live forever and we run out of room. Or there's an increased chance of escape as well.
Yeah, I guess it's motivation to always actually be doing the job. If it's just you will work here until you collapse, then you're just like, well, I guess I just don't have to work very hard then. So
that would be my take on it. If I wasn't gonna die, if I didn't find something, I'd be like, well, I'll crawl down there and take a nap.
Yep. It's a real arbiter storyline. He's guilty. They're gonna kill him, but he's gonna die doing something in service for the Lord Emperor, basically.
Yeah. So you're going to die on our terms, not yours.
Yeah. They do specify in this chapter that there's always enough ska, and it maybe even be biological, that there's always enough to go around, no matter how many you kill. We find out that recruitment is picked up. He brought 240 people this time.
I loved Ham's line. Like, Kelsier comes down and is like, man, that's a hell of an entryway. And Ham's just like, you should see the bathroom.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I really don't. Because that, as soon as he says that, it gets you thinking, like, well, yeah, how do they handle that with like 10,000 people underground? I mean, did people clean this out and take it? No, I don't want to know. I'm not going to think about it.
Just as soon as he said that, I laughed out loud. That was such a good line.
And Yedden is really just like, oh my gosh, Kelsier, you are so awesome. Oh, wow. These caves are so cool. Like, Yedden is just like bubbling over with enthusiasm at this point.
Yeah, I mean, not to be crass, but I thought he was going to drop to his knees and, like, open Kelsier's pants. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yep. Look, I also got that impression. Lord Kelsier, may I give you a back rub? What? No.
But Kelsier tries to turn it around, and he's like, well, but you were the one who believed in me from the start, Yedden. All of this is because of you. And he's like, yeah, I did, didn't I? As if he wasn't at that first meeting where he's like, I hate all of you people.
This interaction really makes me think, this is the guy you want to hand control the Empire over to? I'm really losing faith in him.
Every moment, you have less faith in Yedden.
I'm just like, man, I had more respect for you when you were the crappy asshole.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like if Kelsier was all of a sudden to try to take over control after the revolution was successful, this guy's not going to fight him. This guy's going to be like, oh, Kelsier, great, you're here to be in charge, awesome.
Yeah, it's like between this and the way he reacted when Marsh first showed up, it's like Yedden is just the kind of guy who's like, this isn't going to work if I'm in charge. I need other people to do it instead. And I can see the results. Like, if Yedden gets put in charge, things aren't going to go well.
And Kelsier tries to play it off when Ham brings it up. He's like, Yedden's just never been part of an effective team before. Results can convert even stubborn people. And then the next line is, Ham didn't look convinced. Because it's not really a very convincing argument, but he totally lets it kind of go. And they go to check out the other 2 entrances. Yeah, there's like 3 total entrances. So they go check out the other 2. Where Kelsier does his whole like, oh man, these soldiers are so awesome. If all your soldiers are as fine as this, then the Lord Ruler's in trouble. He's just laying it on thick, but the men are eating it up, so And we find out that nobody's allowed to leave without a letter from the general, which, when they explain why, it makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like it really dials back into the concerns we had earlier about the morality of what's going on, where they use the Allomancy to convince people to come and join this rebellion, and then they're not allowed to leave until they're sent off to fight. It's kind of messed up.
Yeah, it's like you can see both sides of the argument. It's like, yeah, you can't leave because like if word gets out this is what's happening here, we're all fucked. But yeah, they're basically being held hostage to their own cause.
And we meet at least one guy later who has an issue with that. Okay, so moving. Kelsier's full of good ideas. Yeah, well. I was like, they can't afford out uniforms for all the men, but they want the officers to have uniforms so that, it looks good. Even though Ham kind of hates his uniform, I think we establish. But
this
I don't know.
Seems like a terrible idea as well. Uniform means target.
Well, that's a good point too. And Ham may mention it here. I don't know if you guys remember from before he left the city, but we never saw him before this wearing anything with sleeves. He doesn't like sleeves.
I did not notice that. What?
Yeah, he's always wearing like vests and stuff that don't have sleeves. Ham's not a fan of sleeves.
He's like permanently guns out. He's like, gotta show them off.
And so this is where they start to talk about what we brought up before, where they start to get into it, but it starts out with Ham saying he's worried that the people are doing well in here, but when you get them out on the battlefield, they may not feel like this is a fight that they can win, just because of 1,000 years of being told their place or whatever, right? And Kelsier has, Ham says that he's not used to the whole being in charge of people. And Kelsier has a thought where he's like, I know how you feel. I'm a thief, not a prophet. But sometimes we have to do what the job requires. Which feels a little bit out of place there to me. What exactly does he mean by prophet? You're breaking really up a little bit, Joe.
Hold on. I think Kelsier is really taking on more than he bargained for, but more than he is. And he's imagining a picture of himself to these people that's far beyond, what he actually is, which is a man who has the powers of a Mistborn. He's saying he has to become something so great that they're willing to do anything for him. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at here. He's like, I'm a thief, but I have to be more than that. I have to be more than I've ever been to get this job done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. He tells Ham that Ham's going back with him. They need somebody with contacts in the garrison to gather intelligence, and he's the only one that they have like that. And Ham is sad for a half second, and he's like, I'll finally be able to get out of this uniform. He's not a fan of it. And Ham's like, should we really leave Yedin in charge here? And he's like, well, it's going to be his army at some point. We should probably let him actually lead at some juncture here.
Which makes sense, but it doesn't make me feel better.
No, yeah. I mean, it's totally logical. If Yedin's supposed to be in charge, you got to let him be in charge. But his temperament has never, whether it was grumpy Yedin at the beginning or like hero-worshipping Kelsier Yedin right now, he's never, to me, seemed to have the right temperament to be a leader of a group of people.
No.
No.
He's always come across as someone who will stand back and get other people to have their say. He won't have his own say unless he's just interjecting every so often. He's not a take charge person. So how the hell he wound up in charge of the rebellion after Marsh took off, I don't know.
Good point. Maybe nobody else wanted the job.
Yeah, maybe.
And Ham has a line about how beautiful it is down here, and Kelsier's like, just thinking to himself, like, no, I will never be able to see this as being beautiful after what I've been through. And we find out a little bit more talking about how horrible the pits were. Endless caves going straight down that you have to wiggle through cracks and plunge down into the darkness with no light. And he always made it back up until the last time when he did not find a geode, but his wife gave him one saying that she had found two. And he didn't find out that she was lying until she'd already been beaten to death for not finding one. Which, if his story was not sad enough before, here's a little cherry on top for you.
Yeah, and that question of whether she gave it to him out of love or guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ugh, that's gotta do nasty things to a man's psyche.
For sure.
Yeah. And it affected him so much that is the night that he snapped and came into his powers. And then the line is, the next night, men had died. Many men. Which you can't blame him for, but, jeez.
No. But it's also many men. Doesn't say which men, if it was all the guards or some of his fellow prisoners as well.
It's true. We know that he's recognized as the survivor of Hathsin, as if there is not another one. So if he tried to lead a group escape, it does not sound like anyone else made it. And he's just like, I can't think about this anymore. Ham, tell him, what are you thinking? Give it to me. And Ham is so excited. He's like, really? Okay, here's what I got. And we won't delve into it too deeply because we've hit on it a few times already. But it's just like his thought this time is, are Ska and Nobleman like genetically actually different for various reasons? Apparently the Obligators talk about a thing called the balance, where Ska always have lots of children and the Noblemen do not. That way, there's always enough ska to support the noblemen, no matter how many of them get killed or beaten.
It made me think. I was reading a Michael Crichton book a long time ago, and at one point, one of the characters is talking about the ratio of predators to prey in Africa. It's like, for one, what was it? I forget the exact numbers, but it was like for every one lion you have in a certain amount of square miles, there'll be about 25 prey animals or so. And then you got to account for all the smaller predators as well, like hyenas and jackals and whatnot, and you got to increase the prey exponentially to account for feeding all of the predators. And it gave me that same sort of vibe reading this about how there's always going to be more scar than noblemen, so that they will have, for one nobleman there'll be X amount of slaves.
Yep.
It gave me a very predator versus prey mindset.
That is the Lost World that you're talking about, if I remember correctly.
It was, yes.
Yep. Good book.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally see the parallel there.
I sort of got to thinking that if maybe this was the excuse, like maybe it's a result of like inbreeding amongst nobility, because they've got to keep their bloodlines pure, and they actually have fertility issues and all sorts of stuff, and it's like the Lord Ruler going, yep, that's the way we planned it. It's totally normal, guys. It's fine.
That's kind of funny, actually. I like that. It's like it happened over time, sometime during this 1,000 years, where they just started to have these problems, and he's like, oh no, that's 100% on purpose. Ha ha ha.
Yep.
Wink. And Kelsier kind of refutes all of Ham's points except for the allomancy thing. It's like allomancy is genetic, and no ska has it unless they have aristocratic, I can talk, blood somewhere in the last 5 generations. So that's a point. They have separate bloodlines, clearly. Does that mean that they're physically different beyond the allomancy? I don't know. I guess that's the question. And then he ends with, like, what if the noblemen are right to rule over us? At which point Kelsier's like, you don't mean that. And he's like, no. And Kelsier's just like, look, I know it's hard to see because things have been this way for so long, but this is not right. And you have to believe that. And Kelsier even kind of thinks it later. He's like, Ham is one of the most dedicated people on his team, and even Ham is thinking this. So what must other people be thinking? So he's there for a week, reviewing troops, seeing to training and food and weapons, just being seen mostly. And there's some discussion in here about like magic and how the Ska view allomancy, because they're not even really supposed to know about it. And even Yedden doesn't really have any idea. If you go back to like the first time we met Yedden, he has that line where he's like, I don't even know if Mistborn are real. I've certainly never met one. And Breeze is like, you should talk less. You'll sound less stupid. So we kind of revisit that here, where he still, despite having been with this crew for a while, even he doesn't really know or get how allomancy works. Maybe he never cared enough to try to find out. But it really comes into play with what happens, this big demonstration. So they're at the big dinner.
This felt sort of like Kelsier punishing Ham by proxy for what he was saying.
I get that impression. I mean, I think what the book is trying to say is that Kelsier's just really worried about how prevalent this thought might be, and he needs to get them over it. But I can see how, because it really affects Ham. He's very unhappy about what happens.
And it's the first time we've ever seen Ham like that. I mean, and I remember what Bree said about how he said, if the army only had one leg and were all mutes, Ham would talk about how they were good listeners and their balance was really good. Like, Ham sees the positive in everything. So for that guy to be freaked the hell out, Kelsier's crossed the line.
Well, but Kelsier doing what he did, he's now just gone and shown it doesn't matter. Like, that's a Scar life. It doesn't matter. It's all in aid of this greater good, and that's scary.
Yeah, and we've talked before about Kelsier being kind of a drama queen and needing to do things dramatically, but this is like a whole other level of that.
This is dark. This is a path that he should not be traveling. Killing noblemen or killing your enemy is one thing. This guy's not an enemy.
Yeah,
he might express some different views, but
yeah, I mean, he might as well have killed some younglings. You know what I'm saying? He's got a real Anakin vibe going on.
I guess to establish what happened so that we can kind of talk about it, they're at the big dinner. Kelsier is thinking about what Ham said, and he decides he needs an example to show these guys to get them believing like they can win. So he has Ham point out some troublemakers. So they find this really big guy, a big tough guy who's been a troublemaker. And Kelsier sits there and he uses allomancy to rile up his emotions to get him more and more upset, and then makes a speech. And the guy doesn't even like jump up and like yell anything. He kind of like says something off to his friends on the side. And Kelsey's like, "What was that? Did you say something?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, how come we're not allowed to leave if, everything is so awesome? You're just keeping us here until we have to die for you. Like, we don't have a choice at this point. You're just gonna kill us, and you're keeping us prisoner here until that time comes," which is not completely unfair from his perspective. I mean, we know that they don't plan on the army. Kelsier even says they don't really plan on the army having to fight a whole lot if everything goes to plan. At least not at first.
You don't raise an army if you're not expecting to fight.
Yeah, and you definitely don't train them telling them you probably won't have to fight. It's fine.
Yeah.
So as far as these guys know, they're about to go out and fight. And so he riles this guy up enough to get him to start talking back, and then tries to shame him by being like, "Oh, why are you so eager to go sell out your companions to the Lord Ruler, huh?" And he has the line about how it's not fitting for a general to fight a man beneath his command. Is there some soldier here willing to defend the honor of this rebellion? And we get young Captain Damu from earlier, who Ham is like, "I put him in charge because I trust him. He's not a good fighter, and this guy is one of the best fighters. You can't do this." Kelsey's like, "Shut up, Ham." And he sets these two to fighting each other and uses his allomancy to help Damu win the fight. But at the end of the fight, he makes before I even get there, he tries to get Damu to kill the guy, and Damu doesn't want to. He's resisting, and so in the end, he's like, "No, it's okay." He has a thought, an angry thought, this man should die, and then he thinks, no, this is enough, and he doesn't kill the guy. But he tells the men, or gives them the impression, that beyond the fact that he has this 11th medal that he's going to use to kill the Lord Ruler, that he can somehow transfer his powers to them to help them win the fight. And I talked about even Yedden doesn't understand allomancy, because Yedden's like, "Oh my gosh, you can do that? How can we possibly lose if you can give your allomancy powers to all of the men?" And Ham's like, "Shut up, eat." And he's very unhappy about what just happened. And rightfully so. So now we established, just for the audience, what exactly we're talking about. What do you guys think?
It's fucked up.
It's really, really dark, and it comes back to like that morality thing that we were talking about as well. He picked this guy out and was soothing and rioting this guy, getting him riled up, knowing exactly what he was walking into. And it's like, that guy could have lost his life when he may have just sat there. Like, yeah, he didn't agree with it, but now you've fueled him into doing this. And I know he was trying to set an example, but this was not the way to do it.
Well, you say it was not the way to do it. It was effective. Everyone in the army is like yelling and cheering and into it now. It got it set the example that he wanted to set. Now, was it the right thing to do?
But where do you stop? Where do you draw that line?
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to do this now. What else is he willing to do down the track?
Yeah, and I mean, this is what I've been kind of mulling over this whole episode, and what I started out talking about when we first started talking is just, there's something icky about the whole thing, about what he's doing, about what a lot of the characters do, but especially him, because not only did he try to set an example out of this guy, but he rioted him into speaking up in the first place. He probably could have gone on and given his speech, and that guy may have not completely agreed with it, but he would never, I don't think he ever would have gotten up and kind of opposed Kelsier without being pushed into doing that. So right off the bat, you've got him using that riot power to basically alter that man's behavior and to make an example of him. And not only that, because when you really get down to it, he rioted this guy, and then he was going to set an example. He made the guy stand up to him, and then he wanted to kill the guy. I'm not going to say it makes me sick because it's not a real thing. It's not actually happening, but it definitely does not feel good to read, especially for a character that we're supposed to be behind. So it was rough for me.
He's acting like exactly what they're fighting against. Like they should be better than that.
Well, and almost as if to make the whole thing worse, he then tells Ham, I want you to pick a few dozen of the most trustworthy soldiers and send them back to Luthadel so that word can spread of this evening. And Ham says, so this is about your ego? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like Kelsier just wants all of the Ska to realize how, amazing and powerful he is. And Kelsier says, sometimes we have to do things that we find distasteful, Ham. My ego may be considerable, but this is about something else entirely. But what else could it be about? He's setting himself up as the symbol for the rebellion, I guess. And I see what he wants to do in that he wants the men to believe that they can win. And it's a legitimate problem, as far as I'm concerned, that these people who for generations have been told that they have no right to fight back against their oppressors, they might legitimately deep down believe that they don't have that right, that they should lose. And you can't have an army that thinks that way. That's suicide. But so I agree that it's messed up that he would force a guy into doing this and then try to kill him as part of the example. But I get why it's important for the army. But then you turn around and he's like, now I want everyone back in Luthadel to know about it too, to spread word of this far and wide. Why? What purpose does that serve in this narrative that he's setting up?
I mean, maybe in his mind, he's trying to give the other Ska hope. Maybe it'll yield them more members for their army or something like that. I think maybe that's it probably is effective and it probably will work because they go, oh, this can happen and you can transfer allomancy and this is great. Like we've actually got a fighting chance and people will want to join. But he's giving them a false hope. Like he could do that to that one person. What happens when 1,000 of them march in and then they realize that they can't do it? I don't think it's going to end particularly well. He's just going to raise this army of thousands of people that want to fight, and they really are just going to their slaughter. And does that make, in the end, does that make their cause any better than what the Lord Ruler has done? Like they're going to overthrow this empire and to be the same. Like it doesn't make him any better, in my opinion.
What about you, Dak? Does it support your theory that Kelsier is going to be the bad guy, or like you said at the beginning, is it kind of leaning too hard into it now for that to be the case?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it looks like it's setting it very obviously up for Kelsier to be no better, which I think is the ultimate point. Is like Vin will be the hero of these books, Kelsier will not. Whether that means Kelsier would be the villain or not, I don't know. But I'm standing by my theory that he will be. I don't know. I feel like the final confrontation of this book is probably going to be between Kelsier and Vin.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. It just, after making that prediction and then all of a sudden we get hit with something as heavy as this, where it's like making it really full on, like this is not a good guy. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I mean, like Kelsier says, there's always another secret. So is there something else behind all this? Is Kelsier, trying to set himself up? Like, is he trying to do all the nasty stuff so the rest of the guys in the crew don't have to, and then he's expecting to die in the course of everything so all the others can come through and this rebellion will occur and their hands will be clean because all the horrible, nasty stuff that needed to happen for their rebellion, Kelsier took care of that himself so they wouldn't have to? Is he trying to martyr himself?
Well, you got to figure, if he still doesn't know how to work the 11th metal, that he at least thinks there's a good chance he could die fighting the Lord Ruler. So maybe that makes sense.
Yeah.
Before we hit the end of the chapter, I would like to pull out one thing from the annotations this week, where Brandon writes, on a final note for this chapter, Bilg, that's the guy that Daemu just fought, I prefer him dead. In the original draft of the book, I had Kelsier, through Daemu, kill Bilg in the duel. I thought it was appropriate and would be the sort of thing that Kelsier would do. In addition, I wanted to emphasize the ruthless edge that Kelsier had. He's willing to do whatever he has to in order to see that his goals are achieved. It's this conflict, the happy, joking Kelsier mixed with the hard, ruthless rebel leader, that makes him interesting to me. But apparently, some of the alpha readers and other people had issues with that and felt that it was a little too much, so he ended up not having him die. So that Kelsier, he says, remains a less tarnished hero.
I mean, I think it's still too much. I think that's the point I've been making. I think it's too much anyway.
Mm-hmm. Would it have been a lot worse if he died? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, if he had killed that guy, I might have said, "Hey guys, I can't do this podcast anymore." Because right now I am really not liking Kelsier one little bit.
What if he turns out to be the bad guy? Then it's intentional that you're not supposed to like him that much.
Well, we'll have to see how that plays out, I guess.
You were telling us that, a good bad guy is sometimes the best character. So maybe if you weren't liking him, then,
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, if we got to see how it plays out. It's just this, I don't know how Brandon thinks or about his characters, how complex he wants to make them. I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of this book. But I don't want the ultimate hero to be somebody like this. It's like to me, Kelsier's role is like Snape in the Harry Potter franchise. He's not the ultimate hero of the books. He shouldn't be. He's not a good person. When you get right down to his core, even with the sacrifices he made, he is not a good person. He never was.
He's a jerk.
Yeah. Yes. And so, I don't want the main hero of the book to be somebody like that. I want the main hero of the book, even if they're complex, even if they have their demons, I want them to be good for the sake of being good. No, the ulterior motives fall away. You do what's right because it's the right thing to do. That's for me, that's the definition of a hero. But
do we think that the book is setting up Kelsier to be the main hero? We spent a lot of time focusing on Vin, but Kelsier is the leader of the group, so I don't know. What do you think?
No, I don't think so.
I think I thought so at first, but I don't think he will be in the long run.
Okay.
I think it's really just setting up Kelsier as a parallel to the Lord Ruler. They've made these comparisons that the Lord Ruler is like the young farm boy who grew up to save the world, and in doing so, he became the ultimate villain. I think we're getting a case of history repeating here. Kelsier is like the charismatic rebel leader who's going to take down the tyrant, and in doing so, he's going to become something just as bad, if not worse.
There do seem to be some parallels, yeah. Okay, we move the end of the chapter. Kelsier thinks that he wishes he could explain everything to Ham. Plots behind plots, plans behind plans. There was always another secret. So there's a strong hint there that there's something else going on, something that he can't even tell Ham or maybe any of the crew.
Not even Doxson?
Well, we don't know. It's a good question. I mean, he has revealed more to Doxson than he has to anyone else, like that little conversation we saw them have. So yeah. maybe Dox knows. I don't know.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that he and Doxson don't spend a lot of time together on page. Mm-hmm. I feel like maybe we're right. Maybe Doxson knows almost everything, but there are some parts. I mean, earlier in the book, I know he told Doxson, it's like, you don't know everything yet. I've got more going on than what you know about right now. It's like of the things I'm planning to do are going to shock you.
Just wait till you see what I'm planning to do. Yeah, I remember that. Okay. Any last thoughts before we move on to predictions?
Just on what Joe was saying before, charismatic bad guys or, like complex bad guys can be interesting to read, whereas like this is harder for Kelsier. I think the difference is the fact that when you know they're the bad guy, for A Song of Ice and Fire, Tywin Lannister, we all know he's like an awful, horrible person, but it's still fascinating to read him doing his thing because we know he's an awful, horrible person. Whereas, we were set up at the start of the book to think of Kelsier as the good guy, and it's always very hard to see the good guy doing something like this. This isn't like Han Solo shooting first. He was doing that to save his life, whereas Kelsier Like, there was nothing that forced Kelsier to do this.
Okay. I think that we've had some really interesting talks. I knew that this chapter would be an interesting prompt for some discussions, and I like where we've gone. But let's dip into predictions. I'm going to pick somebody this time to go first. Let's let Dak go first. I think he went last the last 2 times, so he can go first this time.
I don't really have much in the way of predictions. I think that to tack on to my theory that Kelsier will be the bad guy, I think that if Vin's going to be the one who would have to take him down if that were the case, and I think she's actually going to do that using what Marsh taught her, because this is the stuff that Kelsier ignores, he doesn't think is relevant, and the brother that he, didn't really think much of. I think that in some odd way, like, if Vin has to bring down Kelsier, she's going to use what Marsh taught her to do it, and it'll almost be like this is Marsh's, not revenge, but payback by proxy for all the crap Kelsier has put him through.
Okay. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie, what do you got?
I'm not so sure if it falls into a prediction or not, or maybe just a thought. But when to become a Misting or a Mistborn, you have to snap. Now they're going to have thousands and thousands of Scar fighting in battles, and they're spending all this time, getting to know each other and forming bonds with each other. And they're going to start dying. I reckon we're going to see a lot of them end up with powers. Whether it's in time to actually do anything good for the rebellion or not, I don't know. But I think that's something to sort of watch out for. Yeah, I just can't imagine all these people going in to fight. And at the end of the day, it only comes down to these core characters we've got. I think there's going to be some things to watch out for there.
That would be sad if, like, a bunch of people got allomantic powers in the fight, but it was too late to actually accomplish anything. So, oh, now I'm sad. Okay. Joe, what do you got?
Well, I don't know. I feel like at this stage in the book, I felt so icky about this last chapter. I hope that something turns, or that I hope, or I predict that Kelsier will let the audience, the book readers, in on his plan. Because if there is something more going on, then to want to root for these people, I really need to know what it is. I gotta get on the inside. I gotta get the scoop, because I feel like I think Dak has a lot of credence to his theory that Kelsier's going to be the villain of the piece, but I almost don't want that to happen. I want something more. I want something better for Kelsier's character. I want something better for all of the characters involved in the book. So
in theory, Kelsier ends up being the bad guy, and Vin actually has to turn and fight him in some way, which, that could totally be, end of the first book is they take over, they beat the Lord Ruler, and then the second book we fight, it's like Kelsier's the actual bad guy and they're fighting him or something like that. Is that enough for the other characters? I mean, regardless of what Kelsier is trying to do, the other characters still have their kind of noble intentions, depending on how noble you consider it. That Breeze is really in it for the money, because Kelsier promised them the Adium and lots of money. Dox may be the same reason. It's kind of hard to read Dox and Ham. That they're...
We haven't really seen much of Dox at all.
It's true. I don't know if they're in it really as following Kelsier, or if it's for the money that he promised, because they're thieves. That's why they do all this. So I don't know how noble any of those intentions are right off the bat, but let's say that err on the side of these are actually noble-minded people, and they're doing this because at the core they believe that it's the right thing to do to free the Ska from the Lord Ruler or whatever. Is that enough that the other characters are still have good intentions and are still doing the right thing if Kelsier is not? I think for you specifically, Joe. Sorry, just.
Well, I mean, to that question, I'd be like, enough for what? Like, enough for me, or what? I don't understand.
Yeah. Enough for you, because you were like, I need something more out of these characters. I want more for them. So is that enough for the more?
I mean, probably not, honestly, because I'm a guy who likes a Christ-like victory over like evil and stuff. Harry Potter, what other, you know,
Lord
other
of the Rings.
literary, yeah, that kind of stuff. I like that stuff. That's the kind of fantasy and stuff I can get behind. Now, of course, we're talking about a guy who's turning those tropes on their heads in this book. So I get it. I get what he's trying to do. So at the end of the day, I mean, if the story is satisfying, then I'll understand, but it may not be enough, like, for me personally to be happy. Which, of course, as we've discussed, this is the first book in a trilogy, so we may not even get the whole story here. So I'm fine with whatever. But
Okay, interesting. So you want Kelsier to be Jesus? I got you. Okay. Sorry, that was a joke. Nobody laughed. It's fine.
I still believe, as a last thought from me though, I still believe that Kelsier believes he's doing this for the right reasons. Not saying that the Lord Ruler was any different. I still think he believes that he has got all the good intentions, but I think, like Joe said, we've got to be in on his plan soon, because we're in the dark. The characters are in the dark. I don't want to get to the last few chapters and Kelsier go, I've lined this up this whole time. Like, we're gonna have to know something soon.
yeah, I don't want a Columbo style. Let me explain it to you at the end ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I guess we'll have to see when the secrets come out. There's always another secret though, so
There's always another secret, and there's always a betrayal.
Does there have to be a betrayal? That's sad.
Well, but they really bring that up a lot. I really feel like there's going to be something
I mean,
down the
that's
track.
where
It may not be a very big thing,
And
but
in a surprise twist, it turns out Yedden was the Lord Ruler all along and betrays them all.
Okay. For next week, we are doing chapters 22 and 23. So everyone read those for next time. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to hit at the end of the episode. Don't forget music by Miracle of Sound. Check him out. He's got some cool things going. I was just telling Joe before the podcast started that on his Patreon, he's put up some previews of Final Fantasy VII Remake themed songs that he's doing that are really cool. So check him out. Love that guy. And no emails or anything that I wanted to touch on this week, so nothing there. Just 2 chapters next time. And
But if you do want to email us, where do they send it?
Thank you. There you go. That's something we can touch on. You can send us emails at thesanderlanch@gmail.com, or you can leave us messages on Facebook. We did get one message. I told you guys previously that we'd gotten a message where someone said we were really good at keeping the background noise out, and that was the ice cream truck episode. So I was like, I guess we'll see how good we managed to do with this ice cream truck going on. And then she shot me a quick message after listening to that one, be like, I didn't hear the ice cream truck at all. You guys are still doing great. So I was like, oh, thanks. That's nice. But yeah, so you can leave us messages on the Facebook page, The Sanderlanch, or at The Sanderlanch on Twitter. Tweet things at us. I think that's it. So we will be back next week for chapter 22 and chapter 22 and chapter 23. It's not plural when it's just one at a time. Or chapters 22 and 23, if I could talk. So please join us then. We will see you next week, and thanks for listening.
Bring up the brother in me. I'm searching for unity. Everything